All right. Give me one just something.
Hello, everybody in Radio Land.
All right. We're good. Let's do it.
Blowing out your levels with my giant voice.
With your amazing singing voice. All right, count me in, Sailor.
3, 2, 1.
Screenagers, welcome back. Got another very special episode of the Canon for you today. My name is Raph. I am joined by the one, the only, Mr. Sailor Monsoon. Sailor, how's it going? You ready to talk some movies today? Shit.
I'm stepping over my own introduction. That's the sailor way. I'm doing fantastic.
What's this guy's deal?
I'm a little bummed that Donald Sutherland just passed today. We're not going to dwell on it, but it is always sad to see a legend fall. But I am ready to get into this list. So tell the people at home, what are we doing here, Raph?
I will indeed. Yeah, that was pretty sad news. By the time this episode comes out, that will have been almost a week old, that news. Hopefully, between the time of this recording and when this episode is released, there aren't any other sad celebrity deaths that occur. But yeah, that was very sad to learn that Mr. Sutherland passed today. An absolutely great actor who will not be, unfortunately, featured in any of the movies that we talk about today. That was the worst way to transition into what it is that we're going to be talking about. But let's roll with it. Sailor, today we've got a very special episode, another one of our bonus episodes that we're doing in between seasons to give all of our lovely Saw fans out there some bonus content on top of, all of the regular episodes that we do talking about the various movies in the canon. Today, what we're going to be talking about is a list of movies that I've compiled, a list that I like to call the How the Hell Did None of These End Up in the Canon list. So our last special episode, for those of you listeners who haven't heard, we had Duke on to talk about sort of how movies were voted into the canon, the whole process behind that, how they were selected and voted upon, the original idea for why the canon was made in the first part in the written form on the website. So now today what we're going to do is talk about some of the movies that did not make it onto the list that for me in particular are definite head scratchers. Sailor, I think there will be a lot of movies on this list that we agree on. I also think there might be some that you maybe won't agree on. I will hopefully try to make my case for why I think that those movies should be on, and maybe, change your mind a little bit despite personal taste or preferences and all that good stuff. But yeah, that's what we're aiming to do. Sailor is helping me out in revealing the list and reacting to it in real time as I give him my list of movies that I can't believe aren't in the canon.
2 points. I didn't listen to that episode, so apologies. So I didn't know that Duke went over the rules of how we did things. Did he explain what the original plan was for the list? My Thunderdome idea?
Yes, we discussed the Thunderdome. It was discussed that we are considering making the Thunderdome another Saw podcast where you and Dahlgren will debate week after week of all the different movies that you think should make it into the canon. My idea is that it'll be like First Take, but for movies. So just like this podcast is all about positivity and celebrating movies, but Duke and I were thinking that the Thunderdome podcast could just be like the worst of the worst, just, vile kind of place where where debates fly and all that good stuff happens.
Well, yeah, that podcast is probably never going to happen. Because it was supposed to be an article where I would pick 2 movies that didn't make the cut, and then I would have another host on, and we would battle, and then whatever movie won, that would immediately make it into the canon, and the other one would never, even
Would
if it
be
was
gone
great,
forever.
because we started this canon. Oh, Duke probably has the numbers 2-3 years ago, something like that, and I totally forgot about the Thunderdome idea, which has evolved now. It's a completely different concept if I ever do it, but because now it has no ties to the canon whatsoever. So again, probably never
Just its
gonna
own
happen.
Thunderdome.
Yeah, it's just gonna be this soundboard. I love it. And 2, full disclosure, Raph did send me the list, but he sent it like a month and a half ago. So I do not. There's a couple I remember because the ones that I don't want on the list stuck out to me. But everything else is going to be fresh. So about 10 of these movies are going to be brand new to me. So I'm going to be learning what they are along with you, listener.
Amazing. Yeah, this should be fun. I think it'll be a really good time to talk about some of these movies that maybe otherwise would have made it into the Thunderdome. That if you listen to our last episode with Duke, you probably heard that some of these movies, there might be chance for some of them to make it into the canon eventually, just based on how we sort of go about nominating and voting on movies in the future for what needs to be included. But there's also a chance that they never make it in, and this is the only chance within this podcast format that we get to talk about these movies, which for some of these movies could be kind of insane. For others, you might think, whatever, I don't need to hear about that. I don't think it's essential. But Sailor, I think it's time for us to jump into this list. I've got a list of 13 movies. I know it's not a nice round number, but that was kind of just what I decided on. There were 3 movies that I didn't really want to knock off. These movies are intended to be in an order of least egregious to most egregious in terms of having, been left off the canon list. I think that part is like beyond subjective, but I did try to create and craft a list of 13 movies that I would assume most film fans would be a little confused to learn that they're not on the canon. This is enough rambling from the 2
There's
of
enough
us.
time to add Hot Rod to try to bump this up to an even 15. I'm just saying.
Let's party.
I don't think Hot Rod is going to make the list, but I do love that movie. No. All right. Sailor, are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm buckled in.
Buckle up. Let's start it. Coming in at number 13 is Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life. Before we get Sailor's reaction, which I think I assume, what it's going to be, my thinking for this was, Terrence Malick, as sort of divisive as he is as a filmmaker, is someone whose style is something that most movie people, film fans, cinephiles, whatever you want to call yourself, should know about, should be aware of. And I would say that Tree of Life, for me, not my favorite movie of his. I wouldn't say it's his best movie, but probably is the best to sort of sum up what he is as a filmmaker. So I would think that it would make sense for something like Tree of Life to make it into the canon. Sailor, I know that you have thoughts, so.
Well, I'm going to frame it more positively. I think Terrence Malick is a beautiful visualist. If he was a cinematographer, he would rival the best in the business. Like, I truly believe he has an eye for beauty. And a lot of his movies, literally every frame looks like a painting. And I'm a huge fan of his first 2 movies, Badlands and Days of Heaven. But if you go through his IMDb, you will see that there is almost exactly a 20-year break between Days of Heaven and Thin Red Line. And in that 20 years, he must have lost his mind. Like, I don't fucking know what the hell happened to him. Like he must have got into poetry. It became super obnoxious and pretentious with his style. Like I don't get it. When you hear how he made Thin Red Line, and there is an entire movie's worth of actors that he cut out of that thing. Literally, just Google what actors did not show up in that. It would be the greatest cast of any movie ever. And those are the people who didn't make it, because it's more, his movies are more amorphous in concept and idea, and it's like we'll find it in the editing. That's a terrible way to tell a story, and that is leading me to Tree of Life, which I like everything involving Brad Pitt. I think Brad Pitt is doing exceptional work.
Mm-hmm.
I
So is
do.
Chastain.
Yes, she's always great. The Sean Penn stuff, I'm a little less a fan of, even though I think Sean Penn is amazing. I just think it's a little less um, involving for me as the Brad Pitt stuff. But then there's all this other nonsense that I'm like, whatever. If I was going to pick a Terrence, are any Terrence Malick movies in the canon?
No,
Is
they're none.
this is the one we're going with? Huh? All right. I mean, it's beautiful to look at. I'll give it that. It's reaching for something. So I will
Mm-hmm.
at least give it due. Terrence Malick, this is his most ambitious film, and for that, I can understand why you would pick this one, because I mean, compared to Badlands, which is just um oh, I forgot the names of the serial killer. Charles Starkweather and the girl. I can't remember her name, but it's basically just a retelling of that, and it's not much
Mm-hmm.
going on there. There's a lot going on with this movie. It's a feast of a movie, and
Yeah,
if
I,
you
I
like everything at that buffet, you're gonna be full. So
I totally hear what you're saying, and I think part of the reason why Terrence Malick doesn't click for a lot of people is because it's not standard narrative storytelling the way that we're used to it. It's not even something like, you know, Christopher Nolan is like experimental for a lot of people in how he's telling stories, but it is still very much so like he's working within narrative storytelling. And Badlands, Days of Heaven are much more traditional in their narrative construction than something like Tree of Life is. Again, I if it were like my personal favorite Terrence Malick movie, there were probably like 3 or 4 that I would have picked over this. But I think for someone trying to like understand the different styles of filmmaking and like, oh, maybe you want to push your boundaries a little bit into non narrative films, something like Tree of Life would be to me the example that should be or could be in the canon as the essential version of that kind of filmmaking. So that's why I'm going with Tree of Life at number 13. Let's move on to number 12. This might be something that we agree on a little bit more. This is a movie for me, something that is extremely essential to my understanding of, film and life. Um, so I was a little bummed to hear that it wasn't in the canon. I think to me, this is the best hangout movie ever made. I'm going with Richard Linklater's Dazed and Confused at number 12.
oh yeah, we agree wholeheartedly. This is, to me, one of the great teen movies. I mean, between this and Fast Times at Ridgemont High, if you don't see yourself in one of these characters, then we had radically different school experiences. And I didn't even go to school in the 70s, but I still relate because it's timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hopefully, you don't relate to the Matthew McConaughey character, but you did know that guy that hung out at high schools, even though he's 28 or whatever the hell age he is. But this isn't me being 2024 woke and like, no, I'm glad that that character is in the movie because that is real. He is a real character that inhabits this reality. I don't have to agree with everything a character does in a movie to appreciate the movie. Like Ben Affleck is great in this movie. Like the entire cast, it's just a murderer's row of the hottest young actors at that time,
Yeah.
just firing on all cylinders. And Richard Linklater, man, A director that does not get enough due. I really don't think people put him in the upper echelon of the great directors, and I don't know why. He has been consistently on fire for over 30 years. So, and this might be his
Yeah,
best movie.
I would say it's his best movie. I I don't think any of his other movies are in the canon. But yeah, I think you nailed it when you said that this movie is timeless. There's it's very much so of a place in time in that it's like about Texas teens in the 70s, but it is also like so universal in its understanding of the like aimlessness of those high school years that it's like for me it's hard to think of a movie that captures that sort of like time of someone's life in a better way, even if it doesn't necessarily, line up with whatever your high school experience was to a T. Maybe you weren't partying in the woods or whatever, but you kind of you understand that these character like where these characters are in their life journey. I think that that's something super universal that this movie taps into in a really cool way. So, Dazed and Confused, number 12. Number 11, Y tu mama también,
Excuse
our
me?
good friend. Sorry?
What did you say about my mother?
For our gringo fans, "Y tu mama también" by Alfonso Cuarón, whose name I always mess up, but he is one of the best directors of the 21st century. Just like banger after banger after banger. I could have easily gone with Children of Men because that's one of my favorite movies, but I do think that this movie probably fits the canon a little bit more in terms of its status as an essential movie. We do have Pan's Labyrinth sort of representing the trio of Mexican directing geniuses that is Inarritu, um, Guillermo del Toro, and Cuarón. I think that Y tu mama tambien could easily make a case for being a movie that is worthy of the essential title. Sailor, what do you think?
I agree. Um, and it comes down to the ending to me. Because if you haven't seen, it's just two dudes and this woman. They go to Mexico and they just have this. And the woman is much older than the two. Um, I want to say they're teen boys. I don't know. I can't remember exactly
Yeah,
what
like late
age.
teens.
Yeah, they are significantly younger than this woman. Not that she's super old, but they are super young. And they have a weird sexual thing going on, but it's more coming of life. It's a very slight film, but that ending, I'm not going to say what it is, but there's a revelation made about characters. I want to say there's a narrator. Is that what I'm remembering? The
I
narrator
think
just
one of the boys is the narrator.
yeah. It's been a minute since I've seen it, so apologies if I get some of the things wrong, but the details wrong. But yeah, the narrator comes in and just like drops a ton of bricks on you. You're like, oh, that's the ending. Thanks. I didn't want. It's kind of like the Sandlot, where the narrator comes in and is like, everyone had a good time except this guy who got stabbed in the face. The end. And you're like,
Yeah,
great, Sandlot. I mean, Stand By Me. I didn't want to leave the theater with this, but it's very much a Stand By Me ending. But it's also it's personal in a way that it had to have come from Koran's own life because it's so real, so tactile in its memory
mhm.
that I would be very shocked that it didn't come from an experience that he had personally. And before
Yeah.
we move on, I just want to say that they wanted to use a Frank Zappa song in the movie, and the Zappa estate uh, very very strict on Zappa songs. They really do not want movies to use them. And after the movie was over, done and completed, and his widow was able to see it, she allowed the movie to use the song because she was like, Zappa would be proud. And if any movie can convince a widow of Frank Zappa to use their movie because it's so good, I think it would be this one. Because that was a man who was notorious for singing through bullshit. He cared
Hmm.
about real. And this movie is as real as it gets. So I think this is a
Yeah.
perfect pick for the canon.
Very well said. Very well said. Sweet. All right, moving into our top 10. All right, this next pick is one that for me isn't necessary. This is another situation where I think that there is a particular, not filmmaker, not director, but a particular actor who does not make an appearance in any of our canon movies. And I think it's pretty hard to deny this person's work and significance within film history over the last 40 or so years. And I know it's someone who a lot of people have issues with, but I think we do need a little bit.
Help me, Tom Cruise!
We need some Tom Cruise in the canon. And the movie that I'm going to nominate for Tom Cruise is Top Gun, because it did kick off, the entire phenomenon of him becoming the biggest movie star in the history of movie stars, all through, Mission Impossible 18 or whatever it is that we're up to now. I myself am a big Tom Cruise guy. I get that he doesn't do it for everyone, but I do think that we should in the canon acknowledge his contributions to cinema. Sailor, I think that you're going to disagree with this movie, but I want to hear your thoughts.
I agree wholeheartedly on one point. One, I think you picked the wrong Tom Cruise movie. But two, I do think Tom Cruise should be on the canon. I think he is the last movie star we have working today, and the fact that he doesn't have any movies in the canon is kind of shocking to me. I think personally, now this might be a little too close to Dazed and Confused in some way because it is a teen movie, but I think Risky Business is an exceptionally well written movie, and that was the birth of a movie star. That's when he slid in those tidy whities. That was it. He was a movie star forever. You will always know Tom Cruise's name after that. But we're not here to talk about Risky Business, even though I think it is a masterpiece. We're here.
You just wanted to talk about Tom Cruise and tidy whities.
Oof! Any chance I get, I love it. And even in that clip that Will Ferrell was screaming for Tom Cruise, also in tidy whities, they are bonded through their love of tight underwear. Top Gun, I'm fine with it. I am under the opinion that the sequel is better, but that is not saying much to me because I also thought that movie was overrated. I mean, if this is what you're into, then yeah, there's few movies that deliver what this movie delivers. There's a lot of testosterone and male dudes being sweaty and flexing when they check their watches and high-fiving and slow-mo and Tony Scott. Like there's it's a
it
style.
It might be the sweatiest movie of all time.
That's not set in Louisiana or Florida? Yeah, 100%. This is a very... I mean, if this is just for the gays, then yes, the gays can have Top Gun because I know they reclaimed this movie. They love the gay community is in love with Top Gun. They love this movie unironically because why wouldn't you? A lot of hot dudes with no shirts on with this one. It's fine. Like there's like 20 other movies in the canon I would rather have on. I mean that didn't make it, but like you said, Tom Cruise needs to be in the canon. And I can understand that you would want one of his action movies. And Mission Impossible didn't really get great until like the fourth one, and that'd be weird to like throw in the fourth Mission Impossible.
And not the first one.
Yeah.
I do have one correction to make. Although it's not really a Tom Cruise movie, but he is in The Outsiders, and The Outsiders is in the canon. But something like Risky Business or Top Gun or I don't know what it would be after that. Like, I love Eyes Wide Shut. I don't know if Eyes Wide Shut needs to be in the canon, although I would say that it's like one of the best movies ever made. Magnolia, but that's not really a Tom Cruise movie. That's more of a PTA movie. Mm-hmm. So I think, Risky Business, Top Gun, those two for the same argument, right, that we're making, that
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that launched the career, like launched him into movie stardom territory. Um, I I love the sexually charged energy of Top Gun. I think that the sequel sucked because it was missing all of that. You know, um, the sweat and the music, the volleyball, like all that stuff is great in the first one, I think. But I get Risky Business as well. So there we go. That's number 10. Top Gun / Risky Business.
I'm
I
just
think we
gonna
can do a
pretend
keep
it's
track.
Eyes Wide Shut in this slot.
Yeah.
I love Eyes Wide Shut.
um,
I've been a defender of that movie for over 20 years. I love that movie.
the movie's amazing. But yeah, that's a conversation for another day. Okay. Number 9. We're gonna get a little international with this one. We're gonna go a little bit back into the time machine, but I do think that this is one of the best movies ever made. Certainly one of the best movies that I've ever seen. I think we need a little bit more international representation within the canon. And for number 9, I'm going to go with Persona.
Mm. This is the only podcast that would follow Top Gun with Persona.
Wait, that would what?
Would follow Top Gun with an Ingmar Bergman film.
Yeah, well, that's we contain multitude, sailor. We're not one trick ponies. Our interests are vast and surprising to some, but both movies are very much so deserving of being in the canon. Yeah, man, we have no Bergman. This is the only one of his movies that I've actually seen. I still think that it's, again, one of the most impressive pieces of filmmaking that I've ever seen. It's something that you see and it totally like unlocks like a new piece of your movie watching mind, and you're like, oh, like I can experience movies this way, and so many people have been influenced by this, that it's hard to like it's hard to not call it essential.
Well, for people who have not seen it, because I believe the people who listen to the Canon podcast, very well versed in cinema. But for those of you who have not dug back into the 1960s, Persona is basically a two-hander. It's just two actresses in a house. One plays a nurse, one plays a mute actress, and they just talk. And while they are talking, the stories come out and things are revealed, and it sounds boring as shit, and it's one of the most captivating things. There's a story that the the nurse who plays the nurse, BB Anderson, is that the one?
I can't remember,
I can't. I
but sure, let's go
honestly,
with that.
I think Liv Ullman is the mute. That BB tells about a sexual tryst she has on the beach. That's the sexiest thing I have ever seen in my life, and it's just the story. They don't cut to the story. You don't see the
Mm-hmm.
reenactment. She just tells a story, and it's hotter than any. I was raised on Red Shoe Diaries, and let me tell you, this blows that shit out of the water. But it's not that type of movie if that's what you're thinking it is. It's really hard to categorize because it feels like it's based on a play, but it's not. And
Yeah,
it's just two actors acting, and that's one of my favorite genres, and it's just amazing. And there's
it's like
multitudes to it. If you want to read into the subtext and the themes, there's a lot going
mhm.
on. But the fact that there's no Ingmar Bergman, that must have
No,
I must have overlooked that in my research looking at the canon. That's insane. He should have at least 5 movies.
yeah,
Easy.
one of the best filmmakers of all time. It's a shame that we don't have at least one of his movies in, which will come to be a bit of a theme on this list. And now that I'm thinking about it out loud, I think there are a few other, we'll say, older international directors who I could have included on this list. And by the time we get to the end of it, once you hear this episode, feel free to, you know, leave a comment either on our YouTube page or leave a comment in the comment section on the Screen Age Wasteland website in the article version of this. Feel free to tweet at us. Feel free to email us. If you're like, how could you also leave off this movie? Let's keep this conversation going. But with all that being said, let's move on to number 8, Sailor. So for number 8, we're gonna go with a movie that I think it's one of those, for better or for worse, really influenced a lot of stuff that came after it. Another director who definitely not up to the level of someone like Bergman, but someone who has been very influential in modern filmmaking, I would say. And this movie in particular really, kind of shook things up a little bit when it came out. For number 8, I'm going to go with I See Dead People, The Sixth Sense.
And what incredible restraint for you to put The Sixth Sense in placement 8 instead of 6th place.
Number 6? Yeah. That would have been silly.
It would have, but that's Sailor would have done it. Yeah, I am a M. Night Shyamalan defender. Sometimes, ironically, I am one of those.
Are you a Village defender?
Yes, but I'm also the Happening defender.
My man. Oh, I know some Happening defenders, and you know what? I get it. I haven't seen it, but I could totally see myself being the Happening defender. But The Village, unironically, is like, I think, incredible.
I've never if you don't dig The Village, then yes, I understand why you think The Happening is awful. Because I'm like, if you don't think this is good, because yeah, the twist is a little. We're not going to get into it, but I love The Village. I think it's a great little Twilight Zone episode. The Happening is, as long as you go into that movie understanding what Shyamalan is doing, I think everything in that movie is intentional. You don't accidentally cast Mark Wahlberg as a science teacher. That's all I'm saying. He knows what he's doing in that movie. Like, it's very tongue-in-cheek, that movie. But this is one of those movies where all of the elements came together. Like, his style, his penchant for twists, the performances. I mean, Haley Joel Osment was up for an Oscar. I think a lot of people forget that. And he was a baby. He was a little baby in this. Bruce Willis. M. Night Shyamalan might be the only director that I'm thinking of right now, or at least one of them. They got 2 great performances out of Bruce Willis. Not a a very rare feat. Not easy to accomplish. And no offense to Bruce Willis, I think he gave a lot of amazing performances, but
welcome to the party, pal.
There we go. I love to hear it. Yeah, I just think this is one of the great thrillers of the 90s. And it's such an. I mean, it's one of those movies that once you know the twist, which we're not going to get into, even though everyone on Earth knows what it is by now. Then you have to watch the movie again. It forces you, like, oh, did he cheat? And he doesn't cheat. I mean, he takes a lot of, let's say, artistic liberties on how certain characters would act in certain scenarios, and you just have to buy that. But he doesn't cheat, and I think it's very impressive that he made a movie around that twist, and it still works. And Toni Collette also amazing in this movie.
Dude, her in the car. You know the scene.
I know the scene, and she's giving an amazing performance. But that's actually one of my least favorite shots in the movie, because not but 2 minutes earlier in that scene is one of the best jump scares in the fucking movie, where the dead bicyclist is at the mom's car window, but he still has it shot like that. He's still, framed like that. So I'm still waiting for a goddamn ghost to show up. I'm like, God damn it, why didn't you move the camera so I'm not expecting ghosts?
Yeah.
It kind of takes away from Toni Collette's amazing monologue. Or not even monologue, she's just sitting there listening to Haley Joel Osment. And the camera doesn't even zoom in on her face. It's still the wide shot. I'm like, God damn it, there's going to be a ghost. I'm waiting on that ghost. But No, I think this is an exceptional movie. I also would have fought for Unbreakable, but I know
Yeah,
some bridges are a bridge too far. But Sixth
I
Sense,
could
that's a no-brainer.
I could see an argument for Unbreakable. This is to me just the obvious choice because it is
Yeah,
so. It's like its stranglehold on the culture was, so strong and felt still to this day. Like you say, I see dead people, and you might think of the Kendrick Lamar song, "Not Like Us," but most people will probably still think of this movie. And I think this is one of those movies that, yes, like the big appeal is the twist, but you watch this movie and you know the twist, and you're like, oh, this is still like kind of a beautiful piece of filmmaking and like an incredibly emotionally deep story that this guy is telling that just so happens to have one of the most insane twists in movie history. And then, kind of between this and Fight Club coming out the same year, the desire for twist filmmaking definitely became a little too ubiquitous, we'll say. But thankfully we've reined it in, and we can now look back on The Sixth Sense as being um, an essential movie. At least we should, even though it's not in the canon.
this right now of all the movies we've discussed. Well, actually, never
Mm-hmm.
mind. I was gonna say Persona, but I also understand that most of the people voting on movies in the canon on the site
Mm-hmm.
don't go further back than 1980. It's just something we have to acknowledge, and it is what it is. Some people do, some people don't. Their film knowledge is the last 40, 50 years. That's fine, whatever. Persona,
Yeah,
it's a little bit before, and plus it's also foreign. But Sixth Sense not making the original cut, that is crazy to me. That's
yeah.
crazy.
And that, so going back to the episode, our last episode with Duke, where we talked about the rules, this is where the 2 movie per year limit really hurt something like 1999, where there are, you know 8 movies that could be considered for the canon when you go Fight Club, The Matrix, uh Sixth Sense, Magnolia, Eyes Wide Shut. The list goes on. I wouldn't, but someone could maybe argue American Beauty. But like it's one of those years that's stacked with movies that like fully changed cinema history going forward. And because we could only pick 2, something like The Sixth Sense gets left off.
Yeah.
The same might be true for our number 7 movie. And this is another movie that is more recent. And I would think now that we've had a little bit more time to sit with it, it's kind of hard to deny that this is one of the best movies of the 21st century, of the last decade, whatever sort of title it is that you want to give it. Sailor, how is Moonlight not in the canon? This is one of the best movies I've ever seen.
Good question, Raf. And when you brought it to my attention, yeah, I guess some movies just slip through the cracks, and it wasn't even. Again, I'm pretty sure Duke explained it that everyone was only supposed to nominate X amount of movies per year. I think that the cutoff was maybe 5 movies a year. This was
Mm-hmm.
not one of those years like 1999. A lot of movies are going to slip through the cracks. It's one of the great movie years of all time. 2007, another amazing year. 2019, Moonlight did not come out in a year that had a ton of competition. Like I think La La Land made the cut in the canon. This one didn't. That's insane. Like I love La La Land. Don't get me wrong,
Same.
but Moonlight
I'm
might.
number 1 La La Land defender, but
I mean, I love a Gosling. I'm here all day for it. But I mean, I say this about a lot of things. So Sailor's known for his hyperbole, but I think this is one of the most essential movies of the 21st century by far. Like of the 2010s, this is in the top 10 to me. Might be
mhm.
number 1 question mark. Like it's that
Like
important to me.
I think in the 2010s, like you can make a good argument for this being the most essential of those movies. This movie not only is it so well made. And like Barry Jenkins as a filmmaker is absolutely cooking in ways that you like can't even imagine. Just if you're like looking at like the way that he frames faces, Mahershala Ali's performance is incredible. And then you talk about, everything that's happened in the last 10 to 15 years in terms of like, our social justice understandings of the world. Like this is a movie that sits right within so many different cross sections of all of that and has like helped all of us understand things that we maybe didn't understand 15 years ago even. And then on top of that, it's like, it's one of the best made movies you're gonna see. So absolutely insane that Moonlight is not in the canon.
It also, I kind of felt bad when this movie came out because it immediately made Boyhood irrelevant. Like
Yeah.
Boyhood, the entire movie's hook is let's watch a kid grow in what is it 9 years, whatever
Yeah.
the hell that's the time is. This movie has three different actors playing the same character in three different periods in his life. None of the actors look alike at all. Doesn't matter because you are fully invested in. I don't even know the dude's name because he has like three different
He has
names.
yeah.
So I know,
Chiron, Little, and something else.
is it just Black? I think his name might just
And
be
then Black, yeah.
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 I mean, Trevante Rhodes kind of takes over the movie at a certain point when he's the oldest version of him. But yeah, you look at that experiment and you're like, that's a great experiment. And then you watch this and you go, well, that was for naught because you didn't need to do any of that.
Yeah. You could just do this.
You could just do this and it works. And it works so much better than Boyhood. No offense to Boyhood. I love that movie.
Mm-hmm.
But this is telling a different story. I guess they work as great counterbalances to each other, or like different sides of the coin, because one is from a white person's perspective. This is clearly from a black person's perspective. But even more than that, well,
you got the suburban versus urban sort of setting.
Well, it's also about a young boy grappling with his sexuality, and I didn't want to reveal that, but I'm like, it's almost 10 years old at this point, y'all. You've had time to say, and it's not really a twist. It's more of a slow build over the course of the movie, but it's such a good movie. And I've been a fan of Mahershala Ali since Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Back when he had a much longer name, Mahershala Alabaz Ali. I remember that. But so when
you're a Mahershala Ali hipster.
I sure am. I was like, this guy, this is the one, y'all. You need to pay attention to this dude. And I was right.
Maybe one day we'll see him in a Blade movie.
Someday in 2020, 30.
Yeah.
He'll be 75 years old. He's going to come out.
Yeah.
What is going on?
We figured it out, guys. It's just we'll have Mahershala Ali fight vampires. Thanks, Kevin. You did it.
I mean, this movie's been in the works for so long. Barry Jenkins, who just made a whole ass Lion King, could probably just jump on the project and make the damn thing.
Yeah.
It's been in the works for so damn long.
Barry Jenkins within the Marvel studio system would be interesting to see.
I mean, he's just made a Lion King. Why? Why did he do this?
Well, to make money and fund future really cool projects.
Yeah, you need money to make a Moonlight.
Yeah. Let's move on. Let's get to number 6. Although because we've got 6 more amazing movies, and I'm sure that we'll want a little bit of space to talk about them as well. So let's move on to number 6. Another movie that I can understand based on the voting writers. Not to say that like they have bad movie taste. It's probably just different from my movie taste and what I would consider to be essential. But I think what is widely considered to be one of the best war or anti-war movies of all time. It's something that will sort of like Persona kind of shake you up and make you think differently about what can be done with movies. Also an international movie, a bit older. It's not quite 40 years old at this point, but number 6 is Come and See.
one of the hardest and most harrowing experiences you will ever have. If you have not seen it, which this might be the most obscure movie on the list, or at least because there was a time where you couldn't see this damn thing. It was very hard to see, but eventually Criterion put it out because I'd been hounding them for years. I'm like, fucking put out, come and see, god damn it.
You did it.
I did. It was all me, baby. I did it. You're welcome. It is just a little boy trying to survive in the middle of a war, a literal war, and he's just trying to navigate, trying to make it. It's not a fun experience. The boy sees a lot of shit. It's little boys, no good, very bad day through Germany while Nazis are doing horrible shit. It's not a feel good. You're not going to have a good time watching it, but I do think it is an essential. And I do love the fact that this is so high on the list, even higher than Moonlight, because while I would say Moonlight probably more essential, I think more eyes need to be on this. I think these little movies that are slowly getting reevaluated and being put into that masterpiece essential category that they never were when they first came out. I didn't know about this movie until I think Empire Total Film, one of these publications, put it on the greatest horror movies of all time list, and I was like, "What the fuck is this?"
Oh,
come and see. And I saw it, and I'm like, all right, I can't disagree with it being on that list. It's not what you would think of as a typical horror movie, but if you think of horror as horrific acts happening to someone, I mean, few better examples exist than come and see. So
yeah, everything that you said is absolutely spot on. The only thing I would add is that I think that this movie will like make you rethink how you watch war movies, which is why I think it's pretty essential. Like, you'll see Saving Private Ryan in like a completely different way after you see this movie, and that's like not an easy thing for a movie to do. So I would just add that on top of everything that you said, shining light on these smaller movies that maybe weren't getting the love and consideration before, but now are sort of being rediscovered within, because we have this great thing called the internet, and we can all sort of gain access to things that we otherwise weren't getting access to before, and can now celebrate them appropriately.
Here, I agree.
I think this next one we can keep the conversation about it pretty short. It's probably Martin Scorsese's best movie. It's one of the best movies of all time. How is Raging Bull not in the canon? That's number 5.
And this is number 5, y'all. There are 4 more egregious examples of what the fuck were we thinking. Raging Bull, the fuck were we thinking? How did that happen? I was in charge of basically everything before 1980. And this is right on the cusp. I think this is this is like what, 82? Is this the same year as Elephant Man came out? So 81,
80, 81, or 82.
Yeah, early 80s. So I was in charge of all this shit. I honestly don't know how the hell this slipped through the cracks. This is one of the greatest boxing movies ever made. Probably the best boxing movie ever made. One of the great character dramas. One of the great examples of physical transformation. Robert De Niro is 2 different people in this movie, and 2 different, well, not literally, but he is a monster in the beginning, in the best shape he's ever been.
Like Mike Myers in Austin Powers.
Just like it. But if Austin Powers and Dr. Evil were the same person. Because this held the record for the most weight gained for a movie, and it didn't last long because Vincent D'Onofrio took it like a year and a half later. But the physical transformation De Niro goes through. Joe Pesci is amazing in this. Kathy Moriarty, who was like 5 years old in this damn thing, amazing. The black and white cinematography.
And it saved Morty's life.
And yes, if it wasn't for this, cocaine might have taken him.
Yeah.
Or he might have killed himself. who the hell knows? Like, it was not a good time for Marty. Well, this entire decade would prove to be not so great for Marty, but at the time, now looking back, it's the best, most creative period in his life, and this is the movie that kickstarted that. Coming right off the heels of Taxi Driver 2. God damn, was Scorsese on fire.
Yeah. We messed up with this one. I don't think there's not much else I can say beyond that.
It's one of the best movies ever made.
Yeah, we fucked up.
Yeah.
I don't know if the 4 movies ahead of it are necessarily better, and again, we can argue about the ordering all we want, but number 4. I don't know how you'll feel about this one, but for me, I think it's really hard to think about the history of filmmaking and what we consider essential without giving some consideration to French New Wave and the way that it sort of like took us from sort of old classic Hollywood, took us through new Hollywood, through like independent waves, up through the 90s, and then like everything that we see today. It really sits in this interesting sort of cross point of film history where it's taking everything that came before it, absorbing it, turning it into something new, and then spitting out this new thing that then turns into all of this stuff that we've seen since. So I think it's really hard to just like have a list of essential movies without giving any consideration to French New Wave. If there can be so many different arguments made for so many different French New Wave movies, which one's the best, which one is the most influential. But I think the obvious choice for us to make when we're talking about representation for a French New Wave movie, it's got to be Breathless. So that's my pick for number 4.
This is going to be a very short conversation, because if you would have talked to me probably 5 years ago, that sounds about right, I would have had as strong opinions on Godard as I do with Malick. And while I still can't stand the man and find him insufferable in many ways, as a person and as an artist, I'm gonna bite my tongue on this one. I think it's an essential movie. I will say that. I do think it belongs in the canon. But I need to watch more Godard films. I've only seen a handful of them because I find the man repellent. I just do. When you watch that Agnes Varda documentary, Faces Places, I believe it is, and she's in France or wherever the fuck Godard lives, and she was going to go see him, and he brushes her off, and she's so sad, and she's so crestfallen. She just wanted to talk to her friend on camera, and he comes up with this pretentious bullshit reason why he doesn't want to be in the documentary, and it's like, fuck you. Like, you're not better than Agnes Varda, first of all. Let's get that fucking straight. You're just not. And second of all, you accidentally created a new editing style. You just didn't know what the fuck you were doing. It's the Emperor's New Clothes. Like, fuck off. Get out of here. But, again, essential. I will say this movie is essential, but also in the sense that he lucked into creating a masterpiece. He also had Francois Truffaut writing the goddamn thing. That helps. That really certainly fucking helps, having him on the payroll writing your goddamn thing.
Yeah, I think that there are other examples of French New Wave that we could point to as being more essential, as being more maybe intentional with how they were looking at cinema. But if we're talking, hey, here's an introduction into movie history, and these are the movies that you need to watch first to then expand whatever your knowledge of movies will become, Breathless is like the go-to choice for, hey, here's your doorway into French New Wave,
If you don't have if you have a high tolerance for pretentious bullshit, you might, because I just see the artifice to the shit he makes where I'm like, none of this matters. I don't care. But I have to see more Godard. I just do. So I'm just gonna bite my tongue. This belongs in the canon more than Top Gun, I will say.
Well, it's higher than Top Gun. We'll circle back to it. But we might touch on Godard a little bit later in the list too, even though there are only 3 movies left. So that being said, number 3, another director who I'm very shocked to learn doesn't have any sort of representation within the canon. This movie maybe shouldn't be number 3, but I think it's this high up because I was more shocked to learn that no one had voted for it because it seemed like something that would be up the alley of a lot of our writers. I'm going with 1995 Michael Mann's Heat. Very surprised that didn't make it in.
Me too, considering this is one of my favorite movies of all time. So, I voted for the damn thing. Heat. I mean, we have a lot of crime movies on this list.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of character dramas. So I like where your head's at.
We have 2 Batman movies, including... We have 2 Christopher Nolan Batman movies, rather, including the one that is very much so trying to be a knockoff of Heat.
Yeah, exactly. So the fact that this didn't make the cut, I mean, I love Dark Knight, so I know you feel this the way about Nolan as I do about Godard or Malick. Yeah, I don't know what to say about this. When me and Kane had our podcast, Total Recast, way back in the day, this was our first movie for a reason. Like, we both love this movie a lot. Like, it was the first movie that brought together the 2 biggest titans at that time, Al Pacino and De Niro. It was the first movie that used them, obviously, Godfather 2, but they didn't have any scenes in that movie. This movie brought them together, and man, you feel it. And the rest of the cast is insane. It's such an insane movie. Val Kilmer. God damn. God bless him. God bless Val Kilmer. Also shocked that, no Michael Mann footprint at all. Thief? Insider? What are we doing, y'all?
Nothing. Yeah. Collateral, great Tom Cruise movie.
Yeah, I guess I can. I love Collateral. I could easily make a case for Collateral over time.
Yeah.
But Insider not making
surprising.
it is also surprising to me. I guess
that's also 99.
Yeah, I think people should forgetting about Insider, but no one should have forgotten about Heat, one of the essential movies in the 90s, in my opinion.
Similar to Raging Bull, just really, this is one that we missed. There's not much beyond that. Just how did that one slip through the cracks?
It's a head scratcher.
Let's move into our top two movies that most surprised me that are not included within our canon. Number 2, I think, might be interesting because I'm not sure that it's a movie that resonates with everyone, especially everyone at Screen Age Wasteland, in ways that it resonates with me. But I would think that there should be a David Lynch movie, even though he's very much so not for everyone. But I do think his most accessible movie, Mulholland Drive, should be in the canon. I'm kind of surprised that it's not in. So that's the number 2 pick, Mulholland Drive.
The most surprising thing that just came out of your mouth is that you think this is his most accessible film.
What else would it be? Elephant
Man or Straight Story?
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen Elephant Man.
It's literally as this movie not accessible at all. I watched this
more
movie
accessible than like Eraserhead or Lost Highway or something.
I would put it in the same category as Lost Highway. Eraserhead is its own thing. You're either going to get it within 5 minutes or you're not, and you're not ever going to get it. This I place on the same continuum as Lost Highway. where a character is playing two different characters in two different time periods, and then it goes from there, and you're like, oh, like when I first saw this movie, I had no idea Naomi Watts was supposed to be playing two different characters in the goddamn thing. Like, I didn't get any of this fucking thing at all. Now, it's, I think, one of the, this and Lost Highway, I'm glad you and Inland Empire really benefit from watching film analysis videos of. Like, once you understand what the fuck he's trying to do, then you're like, okay, now I have an entrant point. Now I can penetrate this movie, because this is a lot of movie. If you haven't seen a David Lynch movie, this is not the one I would start with. You got to work up to a Mulholland Drive. Then you might get it. I still don't get it to a certain degree. I love that he made it. I love that this was supposed to be another Twin Peaks show, type show. Like, this was born out of a pilot that he was making. And he's like, I'll just turn this into a movie. You're like, oh, okay. All right. Sure. Why
David Lynch, you can do whatever you want. You could do weirdo.
You could do whatever the hell you want. He's a beautiful, glorious weirdo of a man, and God bless David Lynch. I am also sad that the age of the auteur, as Netflix, the head of Netflix put it, is over, because they were going to bankroll a David Lynch movie and they canceled it. So David Lynch might not ever make another movie, and that's very sad to me. I'm not the biggest fan of his movies, but the man should work, because there is no one making shit like him, and this is one of the great examples of that. This is a testament to the fact that his brain is on a wavelength that the rest of us are not.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, for me, like, the first time I watched Mulholland Drive, I was like, I have no idea what I'm watching, but I am like so in love with everything that's happening on the screen. Like, the sort of like emotional joy that I was feeling, and like the curiosities that were popping up within me were so nice. Like, no matter how confused I was about what was going on and like the actual plotting of it. And it does suck that he's not going to be able to make more stuff, but like, Netflix will give a gazillion dollars to the Russo brothers to make another like Ryan Reynolds movie. You know, that's just like, that's kind of shitty. And I think David Lynch should be represented within the canon. Sort of similar to Terrence Malick, like definitely more like off the beaten path if you're looking for some more like surreal type filmmaking that's not necessarily as straightforward as some of the other things that we're used to. You know, I think that this would be a good jumping off point for trying to explore some stuff like that.
I agree with that.
Alrighty. Shall we get to number one?
I would drum roll if I could.
Yeah, I don't have a drum roll on the soundboard. This is the best I can do is this on the soundboard.
Pizza time.
All right.
That works.
The number one movie that I can't believe is not on the canon. I think this is the movie that like was the inception for this list. I think it kind of has a lot of elements of a lot of the movies that we've talked about on this list. It's from a director who I think needs to be included on this list. It's not an international movie, but in many ways it kind of feels like an international movie. It's one of the most tightly directed movies I've ever seen. It will, you know, expand your mind in terms of how you understand what it is that movies are able to do, the issues that they're able to tackle, how they're able to be made, all of that good stuff. And I just think it's like one of the best movies ever made, ever constructed. My number one movie for this list of how did it not get onto the canon is Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing.
This is one of those where I shrug and go, I don't know how this didn't make it. Like, what were we doing, y'all? We were sleeping the wheel.
What were we thinking?
Honestly, we just talked about Raging Bull, and I wish Raging Bull was like right next to it, because that's the beginning of the 80s. This is right at the end. This is the tail end of the 80s, and these might be the two best movies of that decade. This might be the best movie of the 80s, and that's about as high a praise I can give to a movie from a director that I think it's fair to say hit or miss.
Mm-hmm.
I,
But like sometimes he hits like Do the Right Thing.
yeah, yeah. And then sometimes he makes a Red Hook Summer, and you're like, you made Do the Right Thing, and you made this?
Yeah.
The fuck? How did that happen? The Five Bloods? What? I actually kind of like
I
that.
like the Five Bloods.
Yeah, I didn't mind that one. I was trying to. The Sweet Blood of Jesus is the one, but the Five
Yeah, or
Bloods.
like Chirac or something.
Yeah,
I haven't
you're
seen
like,
that one.
what the fuck? How are you getting worse? But Do the Right Thing. You were talking about the sweatiest movie ever made. Not Top Gun. It might be this one. This is
Oh,
about as
it might be
sweaty.
this.
It
Well, I
might
was
be.
just thinking, I saw a tweet today that was something along the lines of like, now that I live in New York City, I understand the part about The Great Gatsby that's just like when it gets so hot in New York City, everyone turns insane. And that's the whole plot of this movie is like, yeah, sometimes the heat gets so unbearable that everyone just turns into a psycho. And I don't know if that's like, it can't be specific to New York City, like a specific kind of psycho that we turn into, but everyone experiences heat waves. Like we can all, identify with that part of Do the Right Thing, even if there's nothing else that we're taking away from the movie. But I was talking about, how with Breathless and French New Wave that would come up again. But I think that this movie is in like many ways like one of the best examples of French New Wave cinema and like the heart of how it like understands the language of cinema and is like playing with your notions of it and sort of rewriting the rules of that language and like the grammar of how it's presented to us and things like that. And like if you don't want to get into all of that part of Do the Right Thing, it's just like a really cool and like well directed movie. Like it looks great, the acting is phenomenal. There's obviously, some like societal messages or whatever in it. But it is just like such a tightly made movie in so many ways. And I think Spike and Marty have a lot in common in terms of like their command of the craft, but also being able to sort of like break the rules in cool ways that still make sense within the scope of filmmaking.
I agree, and while I don't always agree with Spike Lee's politics, and I do find him, like a lot of directors on this list, a little bit insufferable. I am very glad that he exists simply for the fact that he has a New York that no other director at that time had. Scorsese had his New York, Woody Allen had his New York, Francis Ford Coppola did his shit. No one had a New York like Spike Lee. Like Scorsese never captured the heat, the racial tension, what it feels like to be compacted with all of these different ideologies, nationalities, ethnicities, and then when you compact that into a boiler, watching it explode. Scorsese never tackled that, and he couldn't because he couldn't tell that story. That's why he gave Spike Lee clockers. He's like, you can tell this story better than me. I can't tell this story. And thank God he did, because not to say that Scorsese was ever attached to this. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying of the directors making movies in their city at this time, this might be one of the best examples of New York that doesn't exist anymore. This just New York doesn't exist to this degree. Like
Yeah.
I'm assuming that people still are people, but the way it looks, the way it feels, it's just, and man, does he capture sweat. Like
Yeah.
it just feels hot watching this movie. You're like, fuck yeah, I want to throw a trash can through a window. Like, god damn.
Yeah.
I'm from Arizona. I'm used to this shit. And I'm like, god damn. Turn on the AC when I watch Do the Right Thing.
Yeah, but that's a dry heat out there.
Yeah.
That you've got. It's not the same when it's muggy and yeah, everyone's in apartments on top of each other. It is, I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be number one I think a lot of these movies could also be number one, but it does sort of, for me, it has a lot of those elements of, similar to like Heat, Raging Bull. Just how do we leave this one off? Well, like, what were we thinking?
No.
How did this slip through the cracks?
Some of these are I can understand. The foreign ones definitely anything black and white I get. But yeah,
Mhm.
this one I think of the head scratchers where you're like, the fuck? This should be number one because it's what? How? Like, how did this happen? How? And we're
Yeah.
not even. I mean, this is going to be another list down the road where we talk about movies that did make the cut, and then you see this and you're like, what? Like,
Hmm?
what?
Yeah.
What? How? How did this happen?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's our list. Sailor, thanks for going through it with me. I'll just quickly spin through all 13 movies one last time before we get out of here. But at number 13, we've got The Tree of Life. 12, Dazed and Confused. Number 11, Y Tu Mama Tambien. 10, Top Gun / Risky Business. 9, Persona. 8, Sixth Sense. 7, Moonlight. 6, Come and See. 5, Raging Bull. 4, Breathless. 3, Heat. 2, Mulholland Drive. And number 1, Do the Right Thing. 13 great movies, 13 movies that certainly could have been worthy of being in the canon. We hope that at some point down the line during some of our revotes and all that good stuff, that some of these movies do end up making it in so that we can see written versions, write-ups of these movies for the website, as well as podcast episodes for us here on the Canon. Sailor, thanks again for joining. Very happy to have you on. I think we're taking a break next week in our bonus episodes, but we'll be back the week after that, and we'll be previewing the movies that we're going to be talking about in season 4. We'll have RJ, Bob, and Jacob on to help us reveal those movies. So that should be a fun one. And then the week after that, we're going to be kicking off the season. So things are heating up. But Sailor, thank you again for joining me for this one.
I'm sorry that it ran so long because I know you wanted this to be in and out 30 minutes, but
We got
that's
too
it.
many hot takes, man. We got too many takes. It's summertime. It's getting hot. People are going insane, similar to the good people of Do the Right Thing. But that's okay. It's been a very fun conversation. Thank you for all of your insight about all of these movies. Obviously looking forward to having you on for the Canon show proper. I think we have a few episodes with you lined up this season. So, can't wait to have you back on and talk more movie stuff.
The feeling is mutual. I can't wait to talk about whatever movie you slot me in because no one else wanted to talk about some old ass silent films.
Amazing. Can't wait for it. Can't wait for, again, not next week, but we'll be back the week after. Listeners, thanks as always for joining us. Definitely, we appreciate your support. Continue to hit us with those likes and subscribes wherever it is that you listen to the show, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. If you're watching us or listening to us on YouTube, throw us a like and subscribe there as well. We really do appreciate it. Any reviews that are left are also greatly appreciated. Helps us continue to do more great stuff with the show, with the website. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, and until then, we will see you as always in the wasteland.